Oh, good evening, everybody. It's a packed house, standing room only. We don't get that too often here, but it's good to see. We got people in the hallways looking in. Wow. When's the last time we had this one? That's been a while. If you are able to stand, please do so for the O Canada. Now, listening to myself, I now know why no one watches the YouTube. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? I know, Mr. Martin, you have a pecuniary interest you're sharing? Somewhere?
I can do that on behalf of Mr. Martin. It is item 9.5.4 zoning report with regard to OK Tire.
Thank you. Anybody else pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Before we get going, let us do some presentation of bursary awards. We have three fine gentlemen here. 4, 3, what do we have? Put up your hand if you're here getting money. Well, there's some people in the back there also got their hand up for money, so I do have checks here. Let's do this. Blake, come up to the front. Ty, Beckett, and I think we have Reed, right? All right. Now, I do have checks here that are, well, I know that those are the parents eventually. They can hold on to them for a very short time. Reed. And Blake. And Ty. Thank you very much for these over here. You guys all here, what is it here for? What did you do that was so special? International Silver Stick, and? You won International Silver Stick. Beat your brother up, is that what you're saying? Gotcha, and? One, and? So you three are winners, and you win. Yeah. We have all that. Now we're going to turn around. We're going to have a little photo up here where you guys get to have a picture with me. I know it's not a great thing, but it does happen that I have to be in pictures with young fellows like you and people. Come on in, let's get a photo picture. Anybody else want to come up and take a picture? That's fine. You're good for the back row. Perfect. Congratulations to you. The great program we have of giving out some bursary awards to help young families out. And now they're all leaving because, you know, they got their money, they're out the door. We don't want them here anyway. I know, appreciate it. Make room for other people in the hallway to come in. Thank you for all coming. All right, we do have confirmation of minutes, item number 4.1. Moved by Councillor Reed and seconded by Councillor Martin that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on August 8th, 2023 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Any comments, questions? All in favor? It's carried. There are, come on in, there's Lots of seats out the front here. Please come and make yourself comfortable. Okay, I got 8 seats, so eight people can be comfortable. The rest of you, keep standing. Any matters arising from the minutes? I don't see any. Matters under the Planning Act. We have ZBA 2023-10, the Sykes LNC 4 Rebecca Street West in Elma. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2023-10 for proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Subject lands are located at 4 Rebecca Street West in Elma. The purpose and effect is to rezone the land from institutional to residential to permit the conversion of the former church to a residence with an accessory unit. We'll now hear from the clerk regarding statutory requirements. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, sir. Agencies and Mapleton staff were given the required notice on August 24th. Proper postings were done on August 24th. Included in the agenda package is comments from Wellington County Planning, Grand River Conservation Authority, Source Water Protection, Upper Grand District School Board, and a planning report from our planner, Linda Redmond, and there were no ratepayer comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We can now hear from Linda Redmond, our planner. Linda.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This is a rezoning. Obviously, it's a former church that's been deemed redundant by the United Church, I believe. So they've sold it. And the purchasers are wishing to convert it to a dwelling. So the R1A zoning is the zoning that you find in Elma. It's for unserviced lots. And they also indicated that they'd like to put another 1-bedroom unit in there as well, which would, under the current zoning, if it's rezoned to R1A, that zoning would then permit the additional unit under as of right, essentially. No concerns with the request. It's an appropriate location. It's a great reuse of an existing structure in an infill situation. So we support the rezoning.
Thank you, Linda. We'll now have the opportunity to hear from the owners, Luke and Karina. Do you have any comments or further explanation you'd like to use? Please go up to the front mic here and any comments? Luke and Karina at all? Okay, all right, thank you. Looking all over for you. There you are. That is a great building you purchased there. So I look forward to seeing what you do with it. Are there any comments from those in attendance? Please indicate so and state your name and address for the record. We'll first hear from those in support of the zoning amendment. Anybody here wishing to speak in support? Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition? Well, it's always a good thing. Any questions from members of council then? Seeing none. This public meeting is now concluded, and thank you for attending the public meeting. Item 6.1, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township Mapleton Council received for information the planning report regarding ZBA 2023-10, Sipes LNC 4 Rebecca Street, Alma, and that council consider for adoption the attached draft zoning bylaw as prepared by the planning department. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have a number of delegations this evening. First delegation will be Heather Griffin regarding backyard chickens. Please go to the podium, Heather, and push the button so you're on the speaker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heather Griffin, and I'm here today in regards to consideration of a bylaw for backyard chickens in Mapleton Township. And I'm nervous, so bear with me. Let me begin by telling our story. We live in a small community within Mapleton Township, close to Conestoga Lake. A few years back, one neighbor decided to get backyard chickens. In the beginning, they started with 10, which was enough to supply themselves with eggs and sell a few. It was a novelty. The entire neighborhood was fascinated, visiting to watch and laugh at their antics and ask questions. These neighbors then decided to expand into specialty breeds. There are many out there, ones that look like they're wearing fluffy pants, others with fun tufts on their heads, multiple sizes, multiple colors. As a result, the flock quickly doubled to 20, then to 30 as the neighbors decided to hatch a few of their eggs. At one point, I believe they had close to 50 chickens, including multiple roosters. Now, I hate to burst your bubble, but those happy Saturday morning cartoons lied to you. Roosters do not just crow in the morning to wake everyone up at an acceptable time of 7:30 a.m. and then go happily and quietly along their day. No, roosters are the watchdogs of the flock. They call out a warning at every conceivable threat. And when you have more than one, they often call and warn about each other. It's competition and it's nature. These roosters crowed from 4 in the morning until up to 10 at night, all day, every day. And their calls carry. You could hear their calls over 1 kilometer away. Imagine a nice spring night, windows open, and your wake-up call happens at 4:30 a.m. from a rooster. And I will mention that these chickens like to wander. They are not constrained by property lines or roads. If you do not have a net over their enclosure, they will wander 2, 3, 4 properties away in search of tasty morsels. Nice landscaping is no match to their scratching. Imagine having to check for chickens before you can put your dog outside in your own yard. Unfortunately, my neighborhood situation has progressed from fascination to anger. Requests to contain the chickens and silence the roosters, so to speak, were spitefully ignored. Obviously, this is a summary and many details have been left out to protect those involved. I have heard there are many people petitioning for a backyard chicken bylaw within Mapleton Township. I can see the benefits of having backyard chickens, fresh eggs and or meat, lessons in responsibility and sustainable living. Distinguished councilmen, councilwomen, honored guests, observers, and neighbors. I am here tonight to recommend you consider not allowing backyard chickens in Mapleton Township, or at the very least, provide some points to consider before you approve a bylaw. First point of consideration is numbers. How many chickens do you allow per household? Does a household need 50 chickens? Research shows that a hen will lay around 6 eggs per week. No matter what you're raising the chickens for, eggs or meat, that is a pile of eggs and or will require an abundance of freezer room. And while we were talking numbers, what about the number of households within the township? Can everyone have backyard chickens? While I appreciate that limiting permits to a certain number of households could potentially raise discrimination issues, it is something to consider. Second point is roosters. Do you allow people to raise them? In this particular case, I kindly but emphatically suggest you do not. They are not required for egg production nor growth of meat birds. And as previously mentioned, they are noisy. It is sad and unfortunate when a person no longer enjoys the use of their cottage because they cannot sleep or enjoy a peaceful afternoon for the noise of the rooster calls. A cottage for which they are paying annual lease fees, property taxes, and all maintenance costs. Many of these cottage owners are retired and want to live out their retirement in relative peace and quiet. While we enjoy a more country living, imagine a neighborhood of backyard farmers within Drayton, each with a rooster which crows a warning in response to a crow of warning from another rooster. The cacophony would be never ending. Third point is chicken comfort and welfare. Can you cram 10 chickens into a square foot coop? Sorry, a 6 square foot coop. Both layer and broiler farms are highly regulated by Chicken Farmers of Ontario, which has clear guidelines for chicken comfort. If you consider allowing backyard chickens, these households should have the same requirements as our professionals. But chicken comfort isn't limited to just the size of their coop. What about potential new pests in the neighborhood? Rats, mice, skunks, raccoons, weasels, ferrets, snakes all enjoy eggs. What about predators? Foxes, coyotes, eagles, and other raptors would enjoy a feast of chicken. Allowance of backyard chickens could potentially bring more of these pests and predators into our urban areas. Animal welfare is also a consideration. Chickens do not like the high heat of direct sun in the summer, require shade, ample water, and food. Who's going to police these households and ensure humane care for the chickens? Veterinarians, your standard small animal vet, does not usually care for chickens. How do they dispose of the deceased birds or dead stock? What about diseases like the avian flu? Manure and the pungent smells that come with it. All of these points should be taken into consideration. My fourth point is containment. It is not enough to say you must contain them to your property. As mentioned before, chickens do not care if you put up a fence. While they cannot fly far, when determined, they can find enough leverage to get up and over a 6-foot-high fence. Allowing chickens free reign of the backyard does not protect them from the predators mentioned before or neighborhood dogs and cats. Containment should include netting of their outdoor space. It is for their own protection. Last and certainly not least is enforcement. No matter your decision, it needs to be included in the bylaws. This includes if backyard chickens are not allowed. This fact alone was probably the largest source of frustration for our particular situation. In our case, we were told backyard chickens were not allowed and roosters were definitely prohibited. However, because there is nothing in the bylaw to state these facts, it became an issue when trying to enforce. Basically, how do you enforce something that does not exist? So while the township does not currently have a backyard chicken bylaw, they do not have one either. In addition, you need to be prepared with clear, concise guidelines and repercussions for those citizens who dare to live outside the rules. There are those who will take a mile if you give an inch. If the bylaw states maximum 6 chickens, you need to be able to enforce that with a citizen who decides to get 10 and refuses to get rid of the excess. While I am of the opinion that the allowance of backyard chickens is more of a pain point than a blessing, I have provided a fact sheet on backyard chickens from the municipality of Meaford. So it was attached, sorry. It can be found on their website. This fact sheet has clear guidance on most points mentioned above, including zoning and placement of said coop within the property lines to avoid neighbor disputes. It could be a great starting point and asset in drafting a bylaw. And I would kindly suggest you reach out to inquire how their program is working for them and any pain points they have. In conclusion, if it were up to me, I would say leave the chicken and egg production to the professionals, our farmers, and save yourself the hassle of complaints, implementation, and enforcement. This is just my opinion, which has been tarnished by my recent experience. However, if I can prevent someone else from a similar experience, all the better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heather. We'll open it up to questions to you from council members, and we do have our bylaw officer here as well today who may want to speak to this. So I'll open it up to questions first. Anybody? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegate, for being nervous. That was a fantastic presentation. It was a fairly decent bar for the next 4 to live up to, so it was very eloquent. Just because I believe we have a bylaw around backyard chickens within the urban boundaries. Is your situation a little bit different that that doesn't speak to? Is that the concern?
Sorry, that is the concern. Yes, we're Cumpville, if anyone knows where that is, at Conestoga Lake. Yeah, so it's majority of the neighborhood is cottagers in the summer. There are, I think, about 10 on my laneway. I think another 10 on the other side. So about 20 permanent residences. Yeah, that is definitely our concern.
Thank you. Councilor Ottens?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. I guess this is a generic question, probably to the bylaw officer. Cumpville is a hamlet. Is a hamlet not covered under our urban boundaries then? And also our bylaw does prohibit livestock, and the chicken is livestock, so one should cover the other.
I will turn that over to our bylaw officer. Maybe you can share Councilor Martin's microphone.
So currently, so the unique nature about Cumpville Drive is that it was severed off of a farm property and the zoning was never changed there. So all those cottages there are zoned agricultural. So when it came to me going there for chickens, I couldn't enforce that property for him having the chickens. The only thing I could enforce in this situation was that his property wasn't sufficient in size to accommodate for a hobby barn. And a chicken coop is considered a hobby barn. So if you were to allow for a chicken coop in the backyard, you'd also have to change the zoning bylaw stating that you're allowed to have a hobby barn, or a hobby barn excludes a chicken coop. So in this case, I couldn't tell him to get rid of the chickens because he was legally allowed to have chickens there, but he wasn't legally allowed to have the coop to house the chickens. And without the coop, you'll run into welfare issues. So that's the route I had to take to get compliance and have the chickens removed off the property there.
Thank you. Good answer. Maybe you'll have to do a little work on some of our areas outside of the urban boundaries for situations like this as well, because there's a lot of people that reside in that, you said with the cottagers, and of course the people that reside there all year long. Something that I'm glad you brought up today. So thank you for coming and bringing that up. Any other questions for the delegation? Okay, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. I do have resolution here, item 7.1, moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, the Township Mapleton Council received information, a delegation of Heather Griffin regarding backyard chickens in Mapleton. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next delegation, we have Brad Gibson here to speak to us. Mr. Gibson?
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brad Gibson from Witzel Dice Engineering. I've been working with Lloyd at OK Tire on the design and associated applications for the proposed yard expansion. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the public meeting back in late May, but hope I can shed more light on the proposed application for 82 McGivern. This includes a quick update on the progress that has been made on site since the public meeting. It's understood that the outcome of the public meeting was that there was some general concern regarding the appearance and fire safety related to the outdoor tire storage. I'd like to start with a quick clarification of Lloyd's business. OK Tire does work with standard passenger vehicles, but a big part of their business is serving the agricultural community. That is heavy tires for tractors, sprayers, liquid fertilizer tanks, and combines. Over the last few years, there have been warehouse supply issues with ag tires. Order times have improved, but they've improved from 8 months to 4 months. So there's still a bit of a problem there. Passenger tires still continue to be generally available next day from a warehouse facility. The issue with serving the agricultural community is that often the call is for an emergency repair or replacement. It's very seldom that we have a case where there's a customer that would be able to wait 4 months to have a tire available for installation. Ultimately, stock needs to be on hand to service the customers. Since the public meeting, we have met on site with bylaw enforcement and the fire chief to review the reorganization of the on-site storage to ensure that the site complies with the applicable law. Throughout this process, the client is now more aware of the fire code requirements specific to outdoor tire storage. Also, a second recycling company has also become available to pick up the discarded tires. We understand that site plan approval is still required for this project. This is generally where items such as the site design, screening, fire and building safety are dealt with. The new plans before council now are generally much further advanced than what would be submitted for a zoning amendment, but will help to illustrate to council the intent of the full build out. The updated drawing incorporates design requirements of the Ontario Building Code, including setbacks for tire storage, drive aisle locations, maximum tire pile sizes, firefighting access, and setbacks from the tire storage to buildings. An underground water reservoir for firefighting water has also been included. The location and volume of this tank was coordinated with the fire department and includes 39,000 gallons of water, which equates to a full 30 minutes of the township's maximum pumping ability. The tank will be located at the front corner of the site and will have a landscape berm placed over top. This berm will provide additional screening to the employee parking and the tire storage at the rear. We also understand that as part of site plan approval, stormwater management and grading designs will be completed and submitted for approval. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions now or be happy to wait if better suited to discuss during the planning department's speech.
Thank you. Have any questions from members of council at this point? Okay, well, I do have a resolution then, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. The Township of Mapleton Council received for information a delegation of Brad Gibson, Witzel Dice Engineering, Inc. regarding a discussion clarification of the zoning amendment application for OK Tire, 82 McGivern Street in Moorfield. All in favor? Sorry, Councillor. Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Someone else to move it? Thank you. That's a good point. So now it's moved by Councillor Tamlin and seconded by Councillor Reed. Any questions or comments then? All in favor? It's moved. Next, we have a delegation of Clifford Bowman regarding the cemetery application. Clifford?
Hello, my name is Clifford Bowman. We have been here before, and I'm wanting to applying for a cemetery in this church here in Wyandotte. So I really don't have much to say, as we have we already had previous issues discussed, and we feel that we have addressed some of them. And Linda has done a very good job of presenting what we have addressed as far as getting the letter from the health unit, etc. And we are just waiting for see what council has to say on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from council at this point? Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, the Township of Mapleton Council received for information a delegation of Clifford Bowman regarding zoning amendment application ZBA 2023-04 to permit a cemetery at 109 Ruth Avenue, Ann Place. All in favor? It's carried. And next we have David Head to talk about the cemetery application. Mr. Head.
Yes, my name's David Head. I'm not opposed to the church having a cemetery. I'm just opposed to where they want to put the cemetery. There's several conditions that came to mind when it comes to my rejection to the proposed cemetery. These lands were governed by the Grand River Conservation Authority, which stated no fences to be installed in the subdivision because it's in a wildlife path. There are no provisions in the subdivision agreement that we all signed to allow for this type of development. Therefore, the owners purchased in good faith and are taxed accordingly to the style of the subdivision itself, which was supposed to be executive homes. The placement of the cemetery would devalue the current homes in this development. The applicants are in ownership of thousands of lands in this area. And should they want a cemetery, they should consider applying for the cemetery permit on one of their own properties. I'm quite sure they would be fine with this type of construction near their homes. Excuse me. They seem to think that it's okay to place this near our homes, and we agree we do not want their cemetery near ours. The increased traffic would increase risk for children living in this subdivision. I personally asked these people at the church several times that the youth attend the church, continue just drag racing and leaving church Sundays to no avail. This is already too much traffic for this area.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to just remain respectful when you're speaking, please. Thank you.
What exactly did I say? Well, I'm sorry. I'm fairly nervous, so I'm not trying to make some kind of a statement that's derogatory. There are several properties in this subdivision that currently do not meet the requirements of the subdivision agreement. as shown in paragraphs A, C, D, E, G, and H that are to cover the properties with sod, driveway construction, parking of vehicles, weed control, and fences. These items should be rectified and brought to the standard, bring the standard of the subdivision up to its required specifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the delegate from council? I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the delegation of David Head regarding the proposed cemetery at 109 Ruth Ann Place. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And next, we have up Ross Deal. Mr. Deal?
Good evening. I'm Ross Deal. I live at 133 Ruth Ann Place, and I'm here to talk about the proposal that was put forth back in March with regards to a cemetery being put at the church property. I think at that time, there was conversations with regards to concerns by the property owners as to why we would not want to have a cemetery put at the church, being water quality. We're all on wells. The cemetery doesn't fit the property that we're in as estate lots. There's going to be additional traffic going back and forth with regards to the cemetery. And then also challenges maybe with regards to property values going forward. So in this, we are still in objection to the cemetery being placed at the church. One of the things that if this resolution is passed, it takes away our choice, and our choice as homeowners. When we first purchased the property back 6 some odd years ago, that we were told at that time that the zoning was going to be for a church only and there was not going to be a cemetery. If this proposal goes ahead, it takes away our choice that we should have made 6 years ago. So that puts us at a disadvantage. And we feel that it's not fair to us as the homeowners on these estate lots that we're going to change the zoning, and which could have negative effects upon our property and our property values. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions to this delegate? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, the Township of Mapleton Council receive information and delegation of Ross Deal regarding the proposed cemetery at 109 Ruth Ann Place. All in favor? It's carried. And that is the end of our delegations. Item number 8 is minutes from committees. We do not have any minutes from committees for this report. And we get on to item number 9 then, which is the building department report. I have here moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that Township of Mapleton Council received for information building department report BD 2023-09 dated September 12th, 2023 regarding August month end and year to date. Does council have any questions or comments about this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Next item up is 9.2.1 regarding an unopened road allowance on Nelson Street in Rossay. This resolution is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information clerk's report CL 2023-14 dated September 12th, 2023 regarding an unopened road allowance in Rossay known as Nelson Street between Head Street and Elgin Street, and that Township of Mapleton Council declares that this open meeting that the real property is surplus. And further, that Township of Mapleton Council has determined that an appraisal of the fair market value is not required. Further, that Township of Mapleton Council has determined that the method of sale is by agreement of purchase and sale. And further, that notice of the draft bylaw declaring the road surplus be given in accordance with the township's notice provision bylaw 2008-024. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any and all ancillary documents pertaining to the sale of said unopened road allowance. I'll now turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, sir. Nothing much further to add. The family that made the application had years ago built an auxiliary building, and they accidentally built it too close to Nelson Street, and this would fix that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Questions to the clerk from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have 9.2.2. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive information clerk's report 2023-015, comparing mayor and councillor remuneration for the member municipalities of Wellington County. Mr. Clerk?
I don't think I have anything further to add. It's just for council's information.
Does council have any discussion points on this? Nothing? Okay. Resolution 9.2.2, sorry. If there's no other questions, then we call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next, we have 9.2.3, moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that CAO's report CL 2023-16 dated September 12th, 2023, regarding the Mapleton Fire Master Plan be received for information, and that council endorsed the Fire Master Plan along with the 60 recommendations listed, and that council direct interim chief Brad Bigrig to begin addressing the recommendations and work with finance to include the recommendations for consideration in future budget deliberations. I believe we have Mr. Richard Boys here as well today. Mr. Bigrig is here. CEO, I'm going to turn to you for right now if you have any comments.
So if I might be so bold, is there, I anticipate that this report taking I'd have two suggestions. I think this report should require our attention for a fairly decent length of time. Would you have any consideration to, if we're going to talk about it tonight versus creating our own meeting for it, would you consider moving it back after some of these planning applications that I think I know we got some fire guys at the back, want to make sure they have their, have a robust conversation, but there's a good part of the gallery here is for some planning applications. I think that we could maybe move through too. So I don't know if that's something we consider, or if we just follow the agenda, that's fine too. But I would like to chat about this report in some decent detail.
All right.
Unfortunately, so.
So let's do this then, council. Let's skip right down to 9.5, which is the planning and development department. We'll go right into that. Thank you for bringing that up. Let me find the right pages here. So council, we're going to go right to 9.5.1, which we have moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that the planning report regarding ZBA 2023-04 Markham Waterloo Mennonite Conference, Part Lot 9, Concession 5, RP 61R11665, Part 1, municipally known as 109 Ruth Ann Place, be received for information, and further that council consider the adoption, the attached draft bylaw. So I open it up to council then for questions and comments and discussion. Councilor Martin, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Sure. I wasn't
Okay.
sure who's going first tonight, so I was waiting to figure that out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding this application, to be honest, I didn't anticipate seeing it back before council again, but I think, kind of procedurally, the way we addressed it the last time allows for this. So first off, I fully respect the applicant's request for having a cemetery. It's certainly nice to have a cemetery close to the church. The uniqueness about this particular application is that council of the day, when the church was approved in the first place, saw fit not to include a cemetery. At that point, I think we kind of talked that not to death the last time we were here, but so I do think that, there is merit to the concerns of the neighborhood. They are overwhelming in the unhappiness with the proposition of having a cemetery there for lots of different reasons. But for me, it comes down to timing. And, if there was going to be a cemetery built or placed on this particular property, it should have been back in the day when the subdivision was being created and the church was, I want to say the first one in that subdivision, but I might be wrong on my timing on that, but the awareness of property owners when they were buying the property, building homes, it can be a big deal for a property owner with a relative distance to a cemetery. Not for everyone, but certainly for some people it could be. So for me, I'm not supportive of the application because of the timing. If we were talking about this years ago with the initial, it would be a very, very different story for me. So I will not support this application.
Other comments? Questions? Councilor Reid?
Thank you, Mayor. I have, again, a lot of respect for the actual application coming forward and the fact that they've come back with a bit of a decrease in what their thoughts were and planning around some like trees and things. However, there's been an overwhelming amount of people that live in that same community that have shown that it's not something they ever thought would happen there because it was never supposed to. And I also agree that I wouldn't support putting it there, knowing that originally it wasn't part of the plan.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we call the question? Okay, seeing none. And council, we have this resolution here, which is to council to consider the adoption of the attached draft bylaw. That's the question. All is in favor of considering the attached draft bylaw? Those opposed? That's defeated. Thank you. Moving on to the next item then, 9.5.2. This is moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information planning report entitled Rezoning of ZBA 2022-12 S Bowman 6381 Yatton Side Road, and further that council consider for adoption the attached draft bylaw. Did you have any comments for this? Nope. Okay. Council? Questions, thoughts on this one? Yep, I know. I can see you searching. If council does not have any questions for this one. Linda, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Which one are we looking at? Okay. No comments on that. It's in the. Just through you, Mayor, there is no amending bylaw attached. The attached letter from the agent is the follow-up information. So I just would appreciate direction from council as to whether or not that's adequate and they're satisfied with that information. And they also are recommending a reduced size in the barn. So just want to know how council, what direction they want me to go in for the amending bylaw.
Someone else go first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Planner Redmond. As far as the size of the barn goes, the reduction, I mean, it's fine to me. My overall concern on this particular application has been and continues to be and is supported by the agent acting on this, that there is no business plan. It continues to be vague. So I think I'm not sure how to be much more direct than like to continue to have this application come before council with the same vague or no details attached to it. I think we're kind of spinning here because there's no real plan for it. So honestly, until there's a plan, I would suggest that the application sits where it is. And if some details develop, I'd love to have a look at it at that point. But honestly, I'm not supportive of it the way it sits.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Tamlin.
Yeah, just through you, Mayor, then. Yeah, I just want to echo Councillor Martin's comments on that. These are future plans, I understand that, but there's still the kind of a vagueness of what exactly is the operation is going to be. So I would agree with what was being said before.
Thank you. Anybody else? So does council wish to, I'm going to get direction here from council, then are we looking at having this postponed to a further date and indefinitely? Or are we looking at turning it down altogether? Councilor Reid.
I think I echo both councillors here saying until there's an actual plan that we don't entertain it at all.
Do I have any motions on the floor for this application? Or are we going to deal with it the way it is? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the planner, is it fair to address the horse barn specifically and leave out the other, the business plan or the business building? Is that something that we could give you direction on that if council wishes to, you know, the horse barn, sorry, the horse barn is proposed as well, right? It's not, or is it currently built and we're just changing, there's changes to it?
Through you, Mayor, to answer your first question, yes, you can address one matter and leave the other matter off the table. If that's the direction council wants to go in, that it would be my advice to defer it so that we can ask the applicant if they would like to proceed in that manner. And then staff can bring back an amending bylaw accordingly. And with respect to the barn, yes, they are proposing a brand new barn. So I can see that might be an option they might want to pursue because they need that facility to accommodate their mode of transportation. So deferral could be an avenue in this case.
So do we have a motion for postponement indefinitely? And that way the applicants can go back to Planner Redmond at an appropriate time and come forward.
Make a motion, just of the business plan aspect of it, not the horse barn.
Well, if we postpone indefinitely, they can bring back the horse barn to the planner and they can bring that as a separate application then. If we want to do the horse barn separately, we have to postpone it so that it can go back to Planner Redmond. Councilor Martin?
I assume the applicant's not here tonight, is that correct?
I believe there are agents here.
Oh, Jeff, sorry, I can see that.
Yep. See, Jeff, you want to take the podium, please, Jeff.
I'd most definitely be a desire to move ahead with the horse barn. I have to dialogue with the gentleman about the other part of it. So thinking, unless they have an answer for me now, I'm thinking maybe the suggestion of a deferment, but we confirm up in the next couple of days. so that direction can be given to planning staff and hopefully come back next meeting for at least just the horse barn. Does that make sense?
That's perfect, Jeff. Thank you. So I will need a motion from council for postponement indefinitely. If that's what you want. Okay, Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Reed. We have that for postponement indefinitely. All in favor? It's carried. They didn't write on that one. All right, we'll move on to the next one. This is moved by Councilor Otten, second by Councilor Tamlin. That Township and Mapleton Council received for information the planning report regarding ZBA 2023-08 2544304 Ontario Limited, Part Lot 10, Concession 9, RP 61R 21955, Parts 2 and 3, municipally known as 82 McGivern Street, Moorfield, and that staff be directed to review the plan for conformity with fire code and building code requirements and prepare an amending bylaw as appropriate. So this is the application coming back from OK Tire. Councilor Martin is out for this one. So comments, questions from the remaining members of council? Councilor Tamlin.
Yeah, so the applications come back with the amended plans to meet fire codes. I know there's been some visits and other kind of movement in reorganizing the space and addressing some of the issues of removing tires from the property as well. So that's great. I think with the considerations for definitely like the visual barriers in place, that's really important for the location of it. And also in order to meet these fire code requirements, then that additional space would be needed.
Thank you, Councilor Tamlin. Councilor Ottens.
Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of allowing this to go ahead, but I think we need to be diligent about continuing with inspections just to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I realize business can get busy and things can, get dumped around, but tires are a serious fire hazard and that's the last thing we want. And we want to make sure this is stored safely with the proximity to a community. So I think once the expansion, it should be solving as a problem, because once you have more storage, but I don't want it to become like everybody's driving shed. The bigger you have, the more stuff you have. So I just live within the means that are there and to keep the inspection level fairly steady and fairly regularly, especially, initially to make sure this stays compliant.
Thank you, Councilor Ottens. Anybody else? Councilor Reed.
Through your mayor, I'm not sure if this would be directed to Public Works or Fire. Any thought on like a water plan for a place this big when we have such a fire hazard with tires?
Stormwater, or are you looking for like a retaining pond? Yeah. That'd be Chief.
Your worship, with respect to the issue of water supply, there are two ways that we can deal with it. Today, we deal with it through tanker shuttle, through mutual aid with adjoining fire departments. I believe the proponent indicated that he was looking at impounding 39,000 gallons of water on site. So that should give us a tactical advantage with the fire to eliminate as much as possible the risk to the public, but also the environment.
Thank you, Chief. Anything further? All right. Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Move on to the next item then. This is going to be a Public Works. Hang on a second, we'll go back here a little bit. Let me go back here. I'm still going to skip over the the fire master plan at the moment. We'll go back to item 9.3.1. This is moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin, that Economic Development Report ED 2023-07 dated September 12th, 2023 regarding economic development update May to August 2023 be received for information. Ally.
Through you, Council. Maggie, if I can just get you to go through the slideshow on there. So this is just the update from May to August. So you guys know what's going on in the Economic Development Department. Sorry, I don't have a clicker here, so if we can keep going. Oh. And the clicker might not work. If you just want to click through it for me, please. So these are just the social media statistics. You all have this in your council agenda. So just saying how much we have gained just between the time of May and August. During this time, we did have our great summer student Michaela on, who is really great at getting our social media posted. She's worked on some scheduling for the future few months as well. So we have seen a great uptake in our social media following in that time. So this is our 2023 CIP update. As you guys know, we did approve $10,000 extra to our budget. That has all been approved through our projects. 2 projects have been completed this year and 5 more are underway, resulting in approximately $268,000 invested in our community. So there's some larger scale projects that are a good chunk of that money, and then a few that are just 50% funding. But it's great to see. One of the projects was the Drayton Farmer Save expansion into the other side with the driving school going upstairs in the building. So that's why that picture is there. We had our Canada Day celebration and fireworks. This slide was wrong on there. Sorry, noticed something on there. We had our Canada Day celebration fireworks. We had the Mapleton Fire helped us out with that, but we had a great attendance again this year and had great feedback on it. The farmers market. So we have had 4 of our markets. We have 1 more to go. It's been going decently well, I would say this year. We have a little bit more attendance than the last few years. We've had 19 vendors out to the markets with 10 average at each of the markets. We do have it downtown at the down at the Drayton Fairgrounds this year. It seems like that's been a little bit better of a uptake, and that also reduced the need for the parking with the theater of trying to manually get the dates not overlapping and not taking up their parking. But we are excited for 1 more on September 28th if everybody would like to come down. Next. So we have released the community handbook. So that came through you guys as well, as you saw the revamp. We have got those out in the Wellington Advertiser. It went out to all the households in Mapleton. It also is now at our front desk at our events through realtors and other community groups. So it's great to see that out in the community, and we've gotten great feedback on it so far. We've started our business tours. So we've done 5 tours so far this year. As you can see, the businesses, and most of you have been at them. We've had great feedback from businesses and from the community, seeing all the businesses we've been at. And as you guys know, it's been very informative and great to talk to our businesses and see firsthand what's going on in the municipality. But it's also been, we've heard some great feedback from the businesses on just opening that line of communication between the township and the businesses in our community. We still have some more to go for this year and looking to keep that going for the future. So Digital Main Street 4.0, we still have Nelia on staff with Minto and Wellington North. So 13 of our businesses in Mapleton have been supported through the Digital Service Squad member. 9 of those businesses have received the digital transformation grant. The other businesses just might not be able to, are eligible for the grant, or might not have applied for the grant so far. It is open until the end of the month. If there's any other businesses listening that would like to apply for it, Nelia is always around to help with that, but it is still, there's 9 businesses, and this is all funded through the Digital Main Street program. So this isn't coming out of our budgeted dollars, but the Digital Main Street budget. We have our newcomer welcome reception. So this is the second one we've hosted. We hosted one last year and this is again, we'll have that on Thursday. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. We have about 20 registrants right now. Last year we did find that a few people came that weren't registered and that's still welcome. We have a few extra bags and recycle bins and blue bins, but we have heard some good feedback of people and we've even got some messages of people that have seen the event that are just moving to town in the next month or so and would like to attend. So it's great to see. And we have, I think just over 20 community groups that have signed up to attend or to add their information to our bags for newcomers to get. So it's great to see and hoping for a great event on Thursday. And then we are just getting into the 2023 Culture Days. So we have 8 events throughout our community. So these events, we either partner with businesses or groups. The library is hosting a few events during this time, or we can support some of our businesses on the material costs. So we've done that with a few of our businesses to get some great culture and arts out into the community. All of the events do have to be free under the Culture Days, but we have most of our events are all sold out. We do have a few spots left for the last Culinary Lavender and Farm Workshop if anybody is looking to attend. The other one sold out pretty quickly and that one just had a lot more attendees at it, but it was great to see how quickly they sold out and how excited people were to come to the events. And we're excited for them all to happen and to show off what great arts and culture Mapleton has to offer. And then just if there's any questions, I'm here.
All right. Any questions? To Ally, all this great work that we've been having in our community. Ally gets off the hook again. All right, I read the resolution already. All in favor? It's carried. Moving on to the Finance Department. Moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council received Finance Report FIN 2023-20 regarding the Q2 2023 operating budget variance as information. Go to our Finance Director, Mr. Morrison.
Through you, your worship, it's still a very thin surplus that I'm reporting right now. As you're aware, deficits and surplus can vary throughout the year because all we're really doing at this point is projecting cash flow projections. So I'm happy to answer any questions that may arise from the report.
Does council have any questions, Mr. Morrison, on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Next item up is 9.4.2, moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens. That Finance Report FIN 2023-21 dated September 12th, 2023, reporting the energy consumption for 2022 to receive information. Council have any questions on this? I'll ask the question then. All in favor? It's carried. We'll go to item 9.61. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that Township Mapleton Council received Public Works Report PW 2023-11 dated September 12th, 2023, with respect to the 2023 Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks Inspection Reports, Moorfield Drinking Water System and Drayton Drinking Water System, and that council acknowledge receipt of the inspection reports to satisfy legislative requirements. Mr. Morgan, anything to add?
Through you, Mayor Davison and council. Yeah, nothing to add there other than I will be working hard here to get your standard of care training for you. Everything else was good. The MECP is really great to work with, and I did attend the Drayton inspection for that. So everything looks pretty good.
Thank you. Questions then on this report? All in favor? It's carried. And next we have the recreation report. 9.7.1, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin. Township Mapleton Council received recreation report 2023-05, dated September 12th, 2023 for information. Amy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are really excited about our update from our 2023 summer camp. As you're all aware, summer camp started in Mapleton in 2021, so this was our third year at camp. So we'll quick run through some slides and we will tell you about some new things we added this year to camp. Next slide, please, Maggie. So I wanted to spotlight some of our staff. These four ladies you see up here are returning staff for us. Some of them, such as Catherine, have been with us from day one, and they are what makes the world go round at summer camp. When we can continue our growth with our staff, it definitely helps provide for a much stronger program. Next slide. So we welcomed 3 more staff members this year, and our first male staff, who you can see loves to fish. It was a great year for staff this year, and I'm so proud of them. They absolutely by far surpassed our expectations. Next slide, please. So this year we, as summer camp goes on, we set weekly themes, we do crafts, we have stories, and we really focus on inquiry-based and outdoor exploration. We added virtual field trips and in-person experiences this year, which was fantastic. Maggie, next slide, please. We also added a summer camp volunteer program where students from the high school were able to come and spend time with us to put in their volunteer hours to work towards their high school diploma. They all need 40 hours of volunteer service to graduate. We were able to give 3 volunteers each 30 hours this year. So they were well on their way, which is fantastic. So week 1 was Shark Week, and week 2 we had superheroes and villains. And week 1 we actually had a virtual field trip with the Ripley's Aquarium, which was pretty amazing. So week 3, 4, and 5, we had Join the Circus, Treasure Hunters, and some moving and grooving. Some of our staff are actually trained dance teachers, so we were able to utilize that skill in Moving and Grooving Week. And we had some fun face painting and a clown visit our program for Join the Circus Week. Weeks 6, 7, and 8, so Mad Scientist, we were able to bring in scientists in the classroom, and we did all kinds of experiments with the kids that week. We had Visit the Rainforest and Rocket Ships and Aliens to finish up the program. So as you can see, our field trips virtually was with Ripley's Aquarium as well as the Butterfly Conservatory out of Cambridge. They were both absolutely phenomenal. We had Cleo the Clown visit and scientists in the classroom this year. So lots of memories are made at summer camp, laughs shared, and friendships built. And most of all, we thank all of our campers and staff for such a great summer camp, and we look forward to seeing everyone in 2024. I do want to quick mention that we had some requests. Parents get all excited at the end of the school year because they don't need to make lunches anymore. So we decided to jump on the bandwagon, and we offered hot lunches 3 times a week at program this year on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and it took off really well. So we are going to continue that with all of our camp programs this year. So PD days, March break, and so on, and we'll look to make that grow as well. So that's it. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Questions then for Amy on her report? Councillor Tamlin.
And was that manageable for? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and yet a question I had for you though is as far as attendance during those 3 years, I mean, are all the camps mostly full, or is there still room for growth, or how were the numbers this year in comparison?
So this year, our numbers are still way significantly up from year one. We had about 250 campers go through last year, this year. Last year we did, or this past year, we did see a decrease as we did have closer to 300 go through. But we do also know that we had some kids enroll whose parents were able to flip to a hybrid working model for the summer. We had some families move that were in our school program that had traditionally attended our summer camp programs and PD day programs. So the numbers are definitely still up from year one, where we saw just around 200. So yeah, we're hoping that will continue to grow for next year, for sure.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. The next item we're going to do is 9.2.3, and this is the fire master plan. We're going to take a 10-minute break before we actually get into that. So back here in 10 minutes, 20 after. All right, we'll get started again. No, Mike's right there. All right, we'll get started again. We'll get back to 9.2.3. I'll read it again. It's moved by Councillor Reed, seconded by Councillor Martin. That CAO's report CL 2023-16 dated September 12th, 2023 regarding the Mapleton Fire Master Plan be received for information. And that council endorsed the fire master plan along with the 60 recommendations listed. And that council direct interim chief Brad Bigrig to begin addressing the recommendations and work with finance to include the recommendations for consideration in future budget deliberations. We do have Richard Boyes here. We do have the fire chief here. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Barron to start it off.
Thank you, Worship. Like Councillor Martin had mentioned, there's quite a bit of information here, and luckily for me, I have professionals here that can speak to the report. They've played a big role. They've played the only role, I guess, to create the plan, and it's a great plan. But the one thing I do want to say is it's going to take some hard work from Chief Bigrig and ourselves in finance and as a team to come back with those, really digest those recommendations, see which ones really apply, see which ones we can address right away. So I do want to mention that as much attention as we're going to place on this, we are going to work diligently to come back with a very detailed action plan with combined with timelines and suggestions to council. So I just want to make sure that that's understood. But other than that, Mr. Boyes is here. And
yes, Mr. Boyes, did you want to speak to it or do you want to just answer questions? I think I want you to speak to it. Go ahead, up to the podium. It's your report. Let's hear from you.
My name is Richard Boyes. I'm president of Emergency Services Strategy and Solutions. I have the vice president and the driving force behind the company with my Bonnie Boys. I will introduce the other associates going through here, but first of all, it was a pleasure to work with the township and the staff to move through this. The presentation is going to be fairly quick overview. By the time I get to the end of the 60th recommendation, it should be about midnight, so we'll be okay. But anyhow, next slide there, please. We embarked on this, started kind of in late December, and then the purchase order was issued because council took the direction to get for a community risk assessment and a master fire plan. So we moved forward, and we will talk about the community risk assessment and the master plan and how they fit together at that time. Next, please. The study team was myself as the president, Brian Durden, who I thought was going to be on tonight on Zoom, but we missed on the link. So if you ask me back to real technical details, I'll defer to the man who's not on the screen. So anyways, but Brian was the lead along with Sue Dawson, and they were in Mapleton here, and they met with the firefighters and did the in-person views and did all the interviews with the study team. Brad Bigrig is with the company, and he did the community risk assessment portion for us. We had MIG Engineering in Sarnia. They did the mapping with Devin Johnson and Dave Bowles. They created all the GIS mapping that put all the response area times into the study. Next, please. We moved through with virtual and in-person meetings, and I can tell you it was very nice to finally be able to get the study team back out and to actually talk to the firefighters in person. We put a lot of value on that and make it work. Mayor and council, the CAO, Mr. Barron there, and Mr. Wheeler and the treasurer have been very helpful all the way through this process. I would be remiss without thanking the previous fire chief for the input that he put into this. And I have the two deputy chiefs here that also were part and parcel of the issue along with fire prevention. We also did talk to the county fire coordinator, the chief building official, planning staff, the director of public works, and all their input fit into making this plan a reality. We looked at all aspects of the delivery of fire protection services. We tend to, as firefighters, focus on
the 3 lines of defense, and the 3rd line is suppression. We tend to ignore public education and code enforcement. When we do this, we look at the whole picture of how you provide fire protection, because it really is more than the big red trucks about this. And if we don't educate the public and do good code enforcement, we're never going to get ahead of the fire deaths. When we had 133 people perish in fires last year, that's unacceptable. And a lot of it was residential and a lot of it was no working smoke alarms. So we've looked at that, and that's why there are sections within the plan that do talk about public education and code enforcement. We did the community risk assessment, and I'll get to that in a moment. And we also looked at where you are, what your pressures are, and where the future growth is in the community. Next, please. So the master plan, it gives the recommendations to improve service delivery. That's really what it is. It's a roadmap going forward. It helps you see where you are today, and we'll talk a little bit about that, where you are today, but where are you going in the future? Again, it's like a strategic plan for the township. The fire department has to have a roadmap as to how it fits into the community, how it relates, what's the service delivery model, and how it works. But also, this is a document that cannot go on the shelf. It will be up to the fire chief to review it annually, address it, look at the recommendations, and ensure that council is informed at any given time as to what the needs of the fire department are. And as I say, it can change. It's a living document. Don't take the recommendations in order. You can jump all the way through it to make it work. There's no thing is like you got to do 1 before you do 2. You can pick and choose as you go through, and some you may not take it all. You know, that's not uncommon in the plans. The foundation of the plan is built off the Fire Prevention and Protection Act, 1997, Ontario Regulation 378, which is the community risk assessment. That's new, as you know, next June, that we have to have them all completed within the province. I'm happy to say you now have your plan. The master fire plan works with the risk assessment. The risk assessment identifies the risk. The master plan tells you how you're going to mitigate the risk and what strategies you're going to take. So that's the hand in hand. And the provincial government through the fire marshal's office put this in place to basically get municipalities to seriously look at what risk are they protecting. And in some cases with the risks, you can say we can't deal with it, or we have to third party it out. You know, you can't be all things to all people. You just have to have a plan. Then it goes to your establishing and regulating bylaw. That's where council comes in. You set the level of service. The fire chief and the firefighters will give input through. The chief will make the recommendation, but council sets the level of service that you want to serve the municipality. So there's a lot of responsibility sits with council to make the correct decisions about service delivery models. And you can go everything from we're a defensive fire department to a full service interior structural firefighting. Those are your decisions. And that's up to the fire chief, though, to give you the information to make those informed decisions. And then, like I say, the bylaws set your level of service. And it's very important that if something goes awry, the fire chief, the firefighters need to be protected when other agencies come in to understand, why did you do this? Were you authorized and were you trained? And that's the most important part. If you say, I'm going to do high angle rescue, and council says that's the level of service, then it's imperative that you provide the training dollars to do it. You can't do one or the other. And that sometimes has happened in past places where, well, we'll do everything and we don't fund it. So then technically you don't deliver the service. Next, please. So we talked about the plan. We also use the relevant standards. NFPA comes up a lot. They're a standard. They're a worldwide accepted standard. Some of them are in regulation in Ontario and some aren't. One of the most important ones is the firefighter certification and the officer parts coming through. But it is the reasonable standard that you will be judged against should something go wrong. That's the part, and because it's worldwide, it's widely accepted, but it is not law. The documentation, we asked a lot, and all staff in the fire department gave us the records, and that we do the deep dive, and sometimes there just aren't records, and we found some places where there weren't the records. But the list was long and extensive, and I thank everybody for indulging us to do it because we had to have that to know where we're going. We did all the interviews. And more importantly, at the start, we did a staff survey of the firefighters, and it's anonymous, but it gave us a really good idea about what's the heartbeat of the fire department like, how does it work, what's going on. And as all surveys go, there are comments written in, both pro and con, but it helped guide us as we move through with the process. Next, please. We've talked about the community risk assessment, but basically, like we said, it identifies the risks and it's the basis for the fire master plan. Now, you will need to approve this at some point, the community risk assessment, and that will go on record as Mapleton having completed the risk assessment to meet the regulation. You have to do a yearly review of the CRA as well. So again, it's got to come off the shelf, and the fire chief should not really let it languish, but I can tell you we do. It does tend to sit there a little bit, but we do. So that's where the risk assessment sets, because again, if the township grows, you get a new industry, something comes, something changes. You've got a lot of standard issues here. And one of the parts is your large rural farming community. There's a lot of risks between farm implement rescue, which then goes back to firefighter certification, silo rescue, high angle and confined space. And I know they deal with it all the time, but where's the training? And those are the important parts that if you say this is our level of service, then they have to have the training. Next, please. So the fire master plan is broken into 16 categories. I'm just I'll leave it for council. I don't need to read it all to council. It's all in the review. But of the 16, there's recommendations with everyone. Some are one, some are multiples, but that's the recommendations. Next slide, please. So there's the second half. But that's the topics we looked at. That came from the input. That's how it arrived there. There are some things that are special to this one. And I know the bunker gear is on the list, but sometimes that's where it sits. That's how these came to be. Next, please. So as we talked about the recommendations, and this is where we could start at one, but in the efforts of time, we'll say there's 60 recommendations. It is a comprehensive document, and I can fully understand. I know you have it. Mr. Barron has said that you've got it, but again, to take time to read it, to comprehend what's in there, it takes time. And we broke it into these types of groups, and I'll explain a little further on. The immediate action required, there are some things that you need to do, and that's in your council report there tonight. But then policy direction, what's the council policy doing? What's the governance going to be? What are the operational needs? And it's a pretty easy one to say operational when it's fire prevention, public education, training, apparatus, fleet, buildings, suppression. It's real easy to put it all in there, but there's an awful lot within the review. And of course, your future growth as to what's coming in growth and what, the planners, we listened tonight about Barnes things coming. It's great the community's growing, but then the risk of the plan has to move forward. Next, please. The tough part about this is the financial considerations, and it used to be a norm, and our company has moved away from it. Is we would give you a list of recommendations and say, in year one, you do this, in year two, in year three, and year four. Well, it's not really feasible. So what you need to do is you task the fire chief with coming back to you with an implementation plan. The fire chief will digest this, as council will, get the implementation plan. Then you can debate each recommendation as it comes forward within the plan. That allows you the opportunity to take the deep dive without trying to deal with 60 recommendations in one shot, because it's impossible to do. It's overwhelming. It's tough enough on myself and the chief there to try to work our way through. But then it comes back to council for the implementation strategy. You're the governing body. You see fit, you manage the township. So then it comes back to you to approve the implementations. Next, please. And we've done it based on, the recommendations to be addressed through future budget considerations are based on your needs and circumstances. It's something that kind of drives me crazy for years. The OFM, I've had many debates, and my colleague, Mr. Big Rig, is the same thing about needs and circumstances, but it's written into the act. And that's what it says. So that's why it's important that council understands what it is, because you can't go to the book. It's not like the building code and say, we need these three things to do it. So it's got to be on your needs and circumstances, and that changes. What's the growth? You know, it ebbs and flows, and, you know, it's hard to say where we're going right now with the economy, but those priorities change. Your strategic plan, where's the township going with all this? Like, what does the township want, and where does the fire department fit into this plan? And the one that you do every year, the yearly budget setting priorities, which is the struggle, because anything that the fire service touches is horrifically expensive and getting worse every day. Next, please. So that's why we talked about not giving you a defined timeline to do this, because again, if our report said you need to do X in 5 years, something may change and it may be deferred out to another 5. It may have to accelerate. And I've watched councils and fire chiefs get paralyzed by, it says in 2026, we will do this. Well, your world changes. So that's why we've stayed away from doing that and leaving it with the professionals in the township to take this forward. Again, needs and circumstances, priorities. I've said that, but remember, it's not against the rules to change the plan. If something pops up or there's more legislation or something, it's certainly okay to change. And I think the one thing to remember, and I learned this from a very good friend and colleague, we did their master plan, and he said, my previous master plan was a 10-year plan. And he said, it took me 20 years to complete it, but I got everything done on the list. So please take a look at this in the same context, that there's lots here to do that. But remember, next, please. You know, this provides the path forward. And a saying that we've learned a long time ago, if you say, what is best for the residents we served, usually that answers your question as to what this is about. Is it best for the residents? And with that, your worship, I thank you for your time and please to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. It is a comprehensive report, and we do thank you for that comprehensive report, you and the team. And I'll open it up for council for questions right now on this report. Oh, Councilor Martin.
I gotta be honest, Mr. Mayor, I'd be perfectly happy to go through all 60 recommendations. I found it is a very thorough and comprehensive report. I really enjoyed it, but I probably wouldn't make it out of this building alive if that was the thing. So for me, you know, I think it, you know, there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of tasks, a lot of fire chief intensive and the leadership team intensive stuff to address. I guess my question for somebody is, you know, the recommendation in the motion about council endorsing the fire master plan along with the recommendations listed. You've provided some great context for kind of what that means, but as long as everyone's clear, I guess that we're gonna wait for some sort of a priority report or implementation report from the fire department's leadership team as far as looking at some of these priority items, I would assume. I certainly, like, if we're endorsing it, that means we're supportive of it, just not approving each individual recommendation. Is that your understanding as well?
I'm going to let the chief speak to this. The recommendations are there. The chief understands the recommendations, and he's going to be doing priority list.
So I think you've hit the nail right on the head. You're endorsing the report. You're not approving it. You're not in the report that Mr. Boyce has presented. You haven't authorized an expenditure, and you haven't set a level of service. You've received the report. You've accepted it. There's no implementation plan attached to it. There's no dollars and cents attached to the report that Mr. Boyce has presented. That will come in a later discussion, perhaps this evening, but certainly in the budget cycle next year and the following years, whoever replaces me. But there is some stuff here that does need to be done. And there is some stuff that needs to be done in year 2, which is 2024. And then there are some things that can move along. But they can't move along until you do some of the, council has to do the deep dive. Richard talked about doing the deep dive to prepare the report. Council is going to have to sit and deliberate just on the level of service, what you want that to look like. And it's almost like a program-based budget. If you want to continue to do confined space budget, the fire chief is, or confined space rescue, the fire chief will prepare you a line item. That's what it's going to cost you each year to continue to do that. So in and of itself, receiving this report or adopting this report does not authorize the expenditure by myself or anybody else with respect to the recommendations in this report.
Councilor Martin, does that answer your question clearly enough? Go ahead. You're on. I know you got more than one, but go ahead.
So through you, to Mr. Big Rig, or either one of you really. So one of the unique challenges of a volunteer fire service is the training opportunity. Like you don't have somebody for 40, 42 hours a week to suddenly say like, we got a training gap. Here we go, boys. It's going to be boys and girls. Here we go. It's going to be multiple weeks of training to catch up. So if you have like, you know, a night, an evening, a week, how would you look at philosophically addressing, you know, some of the training requirements or, you know, the reviews that you anticipate? How would you look at addressing that?
If I may, your worship, right now I can tell you that every member of your department is either certified in compliance with the Ontario regulation that Mr. Boyce spoke to, or they have been grandfathered in previous iterations of certification. So the routine training that we do is basically skills maintenance. So that allows us time, once we know what the level of service is going to be, to push out training in whatever topic it may be. And that includes on weekends. And we do have some members of this department, like every department in the province, so they'll take a week of holidays to do an intense training. But everything we do is team sport. So we can't have 2 people trained in water and ice rescue. We need 40 people trained in it. We don't have the, you know, a full-time department may come with a crew of 8 to a water rescue, and we'll come with a crew of 8 too. Takes time to assemble and they all have to be trained. So we currently do training other evenings on weekends. People take vacation. The Office of the Fire Marshal has a number of live fire mobile training units. I guess they've acquired a couple more. So the actual firefighting training opportunities may be a little bit simpler for us. I do have to tell you, as a fire chief, wherever I'm working, I'm deeply concerned about the level of technical rescue small volunteer departments take on, because it is labor intensive, it's time intensive, and we don't go to a lot of technical rescue calls. We, you know, thank heaven we don't. And Mr. Boyce talked about, if you don't deliver the service, then you have to have a plan who will. And I can assure you right now, there is a plan about who will, in terms of whether it's a confined space rescue or a trench rescue or whatnot. We do have a plan in place through the communication center to deal with that. So I'm not concerned about the training until the fire chief receives direction in terms of level of service. And just like we're going to lay out a budget, we're going to lay out a plan that will be put before you. It'll be done in consultation with the deputies and the training officers to make sure that whatever the fire chief or myself brings to you is realistic and achievable. I don't think anybody wants council to be misled, and I don't want the liability any more than you do, to be quite simple with you. And I listened to Mr. Boyce quite intently, and I just want to make it clear that every one of these trucks has your name on the door, not mine. This is your fire department. You set the tone, and the fire chief executes.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions on the report? Councillor Ottens?
Not sure how this gets addressed, but one of the concerns that I had looking at the report was the response coverage. I'm not sure who to address this to either. There's a lot of there's a duplication coverage with Moorfield and Drayton, and then there's a lot of reliance on, I guess you call it mutual aid, automatic aid partners. And even with all that, there's still like a little corner that's not covered within the recommended time. So I wondered what the plan was going to be to address that.
Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Your Worship. To the councillor, That is probably one of the biggest questions that you have in this report, because we've given you a lot of times and a lot of coverage. You've got two stations somewhat close together. There are models that said one may exist without the other one, but it's the people. That's one of the things you have to remember, is it's the population base. Where did the people come from? So you may need to say, okay, we have two service models, but there are some areas that you can look at. And again, this goes back to now the fire chief of the day. I will say, doing the homework, talking to the other municipal fire chiefs that they interact with. There are some holes, but you are always going to have certain areas in the township that are outside. If you determine that a 10-minute response time is what your goal is, to try to get a truck to the biggest part of the township in 10 minutes, there will be 12s and 14s. We just can't do it. Well, we can, but there's not enough money out there to do it. So again, you make the best decision based on the information from the fire department, from the fire chief, then council will make an informed decision as to the level of service that you're going to set for the municipality. Then you can answer a question that should there be a fire death and an inquest? Then you can stand behind, why did it take them so long? You also run a volunteer model that is contingent on people showing up. And that's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge every day. Recruitment and retention, that didn't get a whole lot in the report, but it's probably the number one issue going on in North America now with the volunteer fire service. So it's a very delicate model to do. And as the chief said, you'll get 8 people, but there may be 4 from one and 4 from the other to do it, or 6 and 2. That's how your model has to work. And that's why the training needs to be, and it is, to the standard. Everybody works together. The stations need to interact very closely. They need to be, it is the Mapleton Township Fire Department, and that's the way it needs to function, because the training is the number one challenge. And, kudos to the previous management for getting everybody certified. There's lots that are not in your position, so you're very well. But the moment you recruit some new members, you're looking at a significant amount of time to train them. And that again is getting people to give that time before you can ever put them on the trucks. And in some cases, it's a year before you can get them up to certification level. So it goes back to, again, what do you want to do as the township for the level of service? Because you have a lot of people interacting with you all the way around, which in some ways is great. Because you also, when we listen to about the OK Tire and the water reservoir, should something go, you need lots of water. And that's when you don't make friends then, you make them beforehand. And then when you call on them, they're here. So again, all back to the fire chief, then again, for council to digest and make their informed decision.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. And it is important that we know as council that we, as Mr. Boyce pointed out, we can set the time frame of when the response time. That's something that's done in policing. That's something that's done with the paramedics. I know we do it at Wellington County Council, when we talk with the chief of the paramedics, we talk about the response times, and sometimes you meet them and sometimes you don't. But the goal is to meet them a certain percentage of time. And that's what you have to set. You look at it and say, okay, 85% of the time we're going to meet that goal. And that's what you're looking for. Because you're never going to always, to reach it each and every time, that's a feat in itself. But it's something that Mr. Boyce touched on as well, as when it talk about recruitment and retention. And I know that, each and every year, I think we're recruiting new people. And that does take time. That does take money. But sitting on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and doing rural forum today, I talked to rural forum right across Canada. And as Mr. Boyce pointed out, this is an issue right across Canada with volunteer fire departments, keeping people trained, keeping people engaged, and the money that flows to do both.
If I may, your worship, one of the things, and I've been a volunteer fire chief a lot longer than I've been a full-time fire chief. The issue I always used to look at when we recruited people, I thought if I could get them and keep them for 3 years, I had them for 30. Now, 3 to 5 is the number. Everything's more transient. People are changing, and the demands are now much greater, excuse me, on the person. So it's a real challenge. So you're correct at FCM, and the province and New Brunswick is starting to spearhead a thing about employers being forced to let people go. So our world is changing, but the fires are still worse than ever before.
I know as part of the discussions we're having right across Canada is, do some of the volunteer services need to be moved to a partial full-time, partial part-time just to fill those gaps in.
You're absolutely correct, your worship. Again, back to the model and looking at, and what have you got for partners around here? How do we pair up? How do we work with other municipal fire services instead of trying to be the island? We've tried that one. It doesn't work. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from council members at this point in time? I'll go to Chief.
Yeah, Mr. Boyes presented a very comprehensive report, and not taken in the right context, it can seem like a little bit of doom and gloom. So for a bit of perspective, you've had a fire department functioning here for an awfully long time, and many of you have lived here for an awfully long time. How many of you have ever received a complaint about the level of service from your fire department? And I don't need the answer, it's rhetorical, but just to bring some perspective to the report.
Now, our fire department is beloved with the community. They are part of the fabric of this community, and we realize that, and so does the community. We thank them each and every day for the service that they do for us. Questions? Councilor Martin?
It's probably more of a comment, actually. But when I lived in another municipality, I shall not be named, before I came here, and in my other job, I had a member of regional council riding along, and we got talking about levels of service. And well, I live just north of Floridale. It's not very far from here, let's be honest. And so we were talking about property taxes and the level of service that you got from paramedic services from the fire department, and versus living in an urban area like Kitchener or Waterloo was the reference, right? And he told me, he goes, well, yeah, you choose to live here. And I was mad back then at that comment. I'm still mad about it now. It's 17 years later. Like, when it comes to level of service, it's really important because that people know what level of service they're getting, whether it's 14 minutes, whether it's 17 minutes in a corner that we struggle to get to. You know, it's a reality that where you live geographically, you know, we're in it's actually probably not unique here, but with Drayton and Moorfield pretty close together, lots of geography all around us that we got to somehow try to cover. That response times or level of service will differ from property to property. But I don't think I think what's important to think about is, you know, the level of service that we get from this group of folks in Mapleton versus a full-time professional service in an urban area or in a city. It's pretty close, right? And our guys and girls are doing it off the side of their desk initially in their free time for pennies on the dollar. So it's you know, I don't think it's lost that, you know, and response times in the city can be high too, depending on where you live, right? So when it comes to level of service, I think as long as, you know, the public is, you know, aware, and there's lots of, you know, things you can do, whether it's remote water storage. You've seen, like, just tonight, you know, Lloyd potentially, I can't speak about it, putting in water at his place, or, you know, they're scattered all over the township based on site plans and stuff. But the one comment, or sorry, question I would have that's not in the recommendations is, you know, will we contemplate, I don't want to say modernizing, but maybe changing the type of mode of response that we have for, say, medical calls? You know, I think there might be an advantage to maybe rolling a smaller vehicle versus a large apparatus to these fairly routine calls that don't require a lot of bodies. And whether that's a pickup truck or a Mach-E or I don't know, a Tesla, like, you could be pretty creative about it if you wanted to. But then the flip side is, you know, rolling trucks and getting use out of them when they're worth an awful lot, you know, there's probably advantages to that too. So I'd just be curious to see if, you know, moving forward, there'd be at least some contemplation of maybe reviewing what that looks like.
To the council, that question is being asked in multiple places. And some are going to rapid response units like pickup trucks. 4 people for a medical call, that's what's needed initially. The rest of them can stay at the station and go if needed. But again, it's about response time. It's about what you want to do for service. But I would imagine, or maybe put either one of the deputies, you get more than 5 on a medical call in the daytime? Yeah, 5 to 7, depends on the day, but those are the numbers. You need to get the truck moving. So again, it's back to service delivery. What you're thinking about doing, what do you want to do? And if that's the way, because the other part about response areas and distance. Okay, so I think I heard 17 minutes. So that's where the fire prevention comes in. You make sure that those residences understand it is a long time. It's a big township. You can't fix the distance and you can't put a station in every corner. So again, let's get proactive, make sure the smoke alarms out there, home fire escape plans are in place, and make sure fire prevention gets the resources, because that's what gets lost a lot of the time is we look at $1 million fire truck and yet we won't spend $1,000 on fire prevention things. So to do that, the comment about training, there is no difference in the level of service now with the provincial standard. 1,001 firefighter is 1,001 firefighter. The only difference, some get paid more. But now with the provincial standard, and that's one of the good things, it always was, well, you know, this department's, you're trained to the provincial standard. As an interior structural firefighter, you're on the same level as the City of Toronto firefighter is structural firefighting. And that's a tough thing to get to, but it's also the point. So don't downplay, well, we're almost as good. You are as good. It all goes back to if you train, you know, so if you train, you're good. If you don't train, you're a liability. So it goes there. And the final thought, $3 million a station. That's the cost of staff at full time. So when they come looking for a little bit of something, remember the 3 million.
Well, we won't be doing that anytime soon.
Well, it goes back to the ratepayer and, you know, affordability, but that is the reality, and that's the balancing of trying to keep the volunteer fire service going, because the alternative is expensive.
Yeah, to go to the finance director with $3 million, what, 60% of our budget right there? It's quite a bit.
And that's one station.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship.
It's a big added. Certainly a lot in here. We do thank you, Mr. Boyes. Is there any other questions at this point or comments? Councillor Ottens?
Given that recruitment is so crucial, I guess this might be a question for our deputy chiefs here. They might know this best. What is our application level? Like, do you get way more applicants for the number of recruits needed? So, and are they good applicants? Like, you can pick and choose from what you've got there so far, or are you sort of just happy with what you get?
Nobody basically on waiting to get on. We hire as a recruit.
Earl Campbell's retiring again? Is that what you're saying?
We do it years. There's a young recruitment training program that happens. Year, 6-month training program that all these recruits go through firefighting. So it's a 6-month commitment to be put for pretty much every weekend for those 6 months that they're busy doing this sort of stuff.
Chief, you got anything to add to this?
No, those are the discussions that I had with the deputies when I first started. I've had a couple walk-ins with some interest, and once we get the final numbers, I think we'll be looking for 5 or 6 people. we'll get a posting put together and move on from there, because I would like to have the people slotted in for county training starting in January.
Thank you. Thank you both. Further questions, comments? Councilor Martin.
This one's last, I promise. As part of the 2024 budget deliberations, are we contemplating reviewing the financial package with the fire service, or is the calendar not our friend for something like that?
Chief?
I believe it may be one of the recommendations in the report, and we'll take that as a part of our submission, the fire submission for budget consideration by council as part of this coming year's budget cycle.
Certainly something Councilor Martin and the rest of council we're going to have to look at for the budget cycle is adding this. There's a lot of recommendations here. There's things that need to be changed, things that need to be done, and it's going to add to the budget line, and we have to be ready for that when it does come forward. Anything else from council members then? Councilor Ottens?
Yeah, this is going back to my original comment about the response coverage. I just want to plant the seed here now. That probably won't happen in my lifetime, but to the fire department to possibly move the Drayton station to this location in the future, because then the coverage area would be pushed this way as that station reaches its natural end. And it would also reduce a lot of the calls needing to go right through the downtown of Drayton, since a good portion of them are barn fires and so forth. And so it's just something that I was noticing. If the station was here rather than where it is, they're further apart, and then the natural coverage areas is larger. So just planting that little
Mr.
idea
Boyce?
there.
Your worship, through the council, the only thing you have to remember, where's the people? Because if you move the station away, you've got to drive here, so you add to your assembly time. And that mistake has happened.
I did.
Oh, sorry. That's happened before. It's like, we'll put it right here in the center of the township. Ideally, all the numbers line up. There's just one problem. It's taking everybody 8 minutes to get here. So again, very solid idea. Back to how it works out. Use the local expertise. Where are the people? How does it fit together? And if it makes sense, then it makes sense. And it's a very good question, because you do need a little bit of gap, but the people are in those two communities.
Thank you. Good question. Good answer. I'm going to actually ask Public Works Director, if that was something that would be entertained, would there be space on this property to do that? To have a station?
To you, Mayor Davison, we could look at the site plan. We do have 2 sand sheds. The only really location, there would be nothing out to the north, maybe to the south, where the berm is. That's probably the only location where there would be an opportunity to expand to the south.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some clarification to that question. Anything else from council? Okay, not seeing anything further. Thank you, sir.
Mayor Davidson, just one moment.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much for allowing ESSI to do this review. We remain at your disposal. Just because the review is done, it doesn't mean that you can't pick up the phone and said, hey, what about this or whatever. So just thank you again for the business, and the CEO and the fire chief have our numbers. So anyways, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Well, thank you. And I understand you did well at the north as well. And I was just talking to the mayor today, and they just got their first look at it. So he's
well, that answers one question, because I haven't heard back from them. So
Yeah.
that's maybe good feedback.
There you go.
But yes, thank you very much.
All right. I did read the resolution earlier. All in favor? It's carried. Move on to the next item, which is 9.2.4. And this is moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed, that the CAO's report CL 2023-17 dated September 12th, 2023 regarding Mapleton Fire Rescue Service needs be received. And then council direct staff to move forward with the purchases outlined below. Mr. Barron?
Thank you, your worship. For the record, I'm just gonna, under top priority, it does say Bunger gear. A staff member did mention that. I did change it and resaved it. Unfortunately, I don't know why I didn't pick up, but I just wanted to say that we did catch the error.
More Bunger gear.
So it's not Bunger, it's Bunker. I apologize. So with regards to this report, in anticipation of the fire master plan getting presented to council, Brad and I, the chief and I talked and agreed that we should probably, or Chief Big Rig should look at essentially low hanging fruit, what things that we can immediately uncover and address so that we're not at risk. And there's obviously a couple of things. There's top priority and it's not a priority, but I would suggest it's much needed. The other thing I wanted to mention is as we have 3 firefighters here with uniforms on, this is a worst case scenario. So there's going to have to be kind of an inventory of taken. So just for council's benefit, if you will, the 121, specifically the station wearing and dress uniforms, are worst case scenario, but we wanted to be able to have the freedom to move forward and purchase what we needed up to 45. So, yeah.
Chief, you have anything to add to this?
No, I don't. From my standpoint, this is my risk management tool. The top items are the risk management tool. The last thing I want is an order saying that we have to do this. I want to be proactive. I don't want my name on an inspection report. With respect to the uniforms and the station wear, we're all part of a team. It's called a uniform for a reason. And I want the team to look like a team in the station doing training as well as out in the community. I don't want a ragtag army of well-trained people. So I think that they're more than entitled to the station where the dress uniform represents the municipality sometimes at the worst time. And I think you found yourselves in that position recently. So it's an avoidance tool for me. The rest will work into the budget cycle. And I'm fully cognitive that the fire is not the only department in this municipality. Again, this is all risk management stuff at the top. These are got to be done things.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? I do know that, Chief, I'm right alongside you. If it's a one team, it should look like a team. And, you don't have a professional team wearing different clothes on the ice rink, and you don't have it on the baseball field. And certainly I can recall being at a remembrance service where one of our firefighters didn't even have a jacket and the hat didn't even fit properly. And we need to have them looking as professional as they are. So I agree with you there. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're looking forwards and not backwards, but Bunger gear, helmets and balaclavas, if you look at the numbers attached to that, that's first line PPE for our firefighters. Any idea how that happened? That this is such a priority item now, roughly for half of our department? Was it a misunderstanding? Is it an oversight? How do we get to the spot where we need that much gear on a PPE? Secondly, the radio software, can you just explain what that is? And then thirdly, no, those two are fine.
So with respect to bunker gear, a number of things have changed with respect to bunker gear in the last 3 or 4 years. The province has implemented a standard for bunker gear, and they put a 10-year life expectancy on that bunker gear. Right now, we are operating with bunker gear that's considerably older than that. One of the issues was that 10-year window. It didn't used to be there, and we used to look at bunker gear and think that it was appropriate for use. Now it goes out for testing and inspection twice a year. The material is starting to fail. I think the other issue that went along with that is that there have been purchases in the past that have been large purchases and they're expiring out. So I mean, the treasurer and I have talked about how to get into a proper cycle of bunker gear purchasing. Yet the final issue that we have is it's not one size fits all. Like, we have a couple of members retiring and the bunker gear may be able to be salvaged and recycled, but only for a person that is exactly the same stature. I mean, when they size people up for bunker gear, they allow an inch to an inch and a half because we know what happens as we get older. But we have tall people, we have short people. And I can't take one set of gear away from somebody and just give it to somebody else. It has to be fitted. So that is part of the issue that we're dealing with respect to the bunker gear. With respect to the radio software upgrade, the county coordinates the county-wide radio system. It's at end of life. And as part of the rejuvenation of the radio system, the software has to be upgraded in approximately 30 radios, portable and mobile radios. That's the cost for doing that. And that's the cost avoidance of avoiding a $3 million radio system is what that is. And the life expectancy of that system is 10 to 15 years. And before I leave, that'll be in the capital cycle for about 2039. So that is the best I can do for an answer with respect to the bunker gear and the software.
Thank you. Other questions? Follow up?
Yeah, thank you. One follow-up. I was part of the Mapleton Fire Department for a brief period of time. Color of the bunker gear was, there's some strong feelings on it on both sides of the fence with each station having their own color. What do you contemplate? I'm assuming it's been a part of a conversation when you're looking at a purchase of 17. What's your plan for color?
My plan, quite frankly, is to hop onto the county spec for bunker gear, and I expect it will be tan in color because I've been able to work with the neighboring fire departments and obtain considerable savings in the cost of the bunker gear if I go on that contract. So it's going to meet the standard. It's going to be a little bit less expensive than what's in the report, pending the number that we actually order. I just want to reassure council that this isn't a blank check for the fire chief to go out and about. Whatever the cost for the bunker gear is, it is what it is. And if there's a surplus, it just remains with Treasury. Same with the helmets. I can get a deal on the helmets, working with some of the vendors right now. I will do that. I will use what I'm required to use to make those purchases, and whatever's unspent is unspent.
Thank you, Chief. Anything further? Not seeing anything further. We do have that report or the resolution that I read. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 10.1. We're skipping ahead. Moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Tamlin, that bylaw numbered 6000-23 being a bylaw to regulate the parking and stopping of vehicles on highways, public parking lots, and in some instances, private property within the township of Mapleton, and to repeal bylaw 5000-05, be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Jamie, you got anything to add on this? No. Okay. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. Item 10.4, moved by Councillor Tamlin, seconded by Councillor Ottens. Wait a minute. What are we doing here? Sorry, hang on. All right, so resolution 10.4 moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that bylaws number 2023-048, 2023-049 be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Any questions, follow-ups? All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to resolution 10.5. Moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that bylaw numbered 2023-051 being a bylaw to authorize a closure of part of an unopened road allowance known as George Street, Donald Sutherland Survey of Glen Allen in the township of Mapleton in the county of Wellington be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Number 11, we have no correspondence for council's direction. There are item number 12, correspondence for council's information. We do have the Optimist Club of Moorfield with their rink roof celebration happening on Saturday, September 23rd. Local Government Week information, GRCA general membership meeting is on there as well. And a letter from the new Minister of Ontario Municipal Affairs and Housing. Any comments or questions on any of those? Any notices of motion tonight? We have no notice of provision. We'll go to item number 15, other business. We'll start other business with item 15.1, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reed. The Township of Mapleton repeal or cancel the Township of Mapleton policy that dictates that the annual staff wage rate be increased as per COLA of a specific month, and further that wage increases be proposed and discussed publicly during the annual budget process. This was a notice of motion put forward by Councillor Martin, so we'll let Councillor Martin start off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to finally actually have a chance to speak to this. I don't think I've ever taken so many questions on one particular notice of motion, and it was probably the way I worded it, to be honest. I'm not proposing canceling wage increases year over year. And thank you to the clerk for providing the policy. I was having trouble finding it. So it's really bullet 9 out of that policy that, you know, and it's even worded, you know, vaguely enough that it could almost work, to be honest. But this notice of motion really comes from a place of you know, I wasn't thrilled through last year's budget process, how this particular policy really seemed to stymie, you know, innovation and creativity around what it looks like. When Marlene was here, when we created this policy, I don't think anybody ever envisioned 0% increases going out, or 7% increases going out for that matter. I think if there was an ability or a lack of policy in place, I think we'd see, you know, staff contemplating various things, including CPI, during the budget process, during the proposal. I think it would allow for creativity and, like I said, innovation around what that looks like, right? So instead of pushing out a 0% one year, if that's what CPI happened to be for that month of August, it would allow for some flexibility. And, you know, inevitably, you know, whether it's pay equity or market adjustments, they always come anyway every few years, right? So there's always going to be a correction. So I would just like to see Manny, John, the rest of the staff being able to be creative when it comes to proposed increases in the number. And then, you know, they've got, you know, I'll point at you because you're sitting right here, you know, then Manny's able to justify that particular increase for that particular year. And it's based on this, this, and this, and this. And for me, that's a much more fulsome discussion that we can have versus CPI in August of 23 was this. So that's what we're going to do, right? I think it's potentially crippling on both sides. So I think to be fair to everyone, I know John hates charts that go like this. And if we could have something that's more consistent and predictable, I think that it could work quite well internally with our staff and externally for council with the politics that we inevitably carry with us by the nature. And I that's my motivation for this particular notice of motion.
So just a clarification question, then you're talking about item number 9, you said on that policy? Is that what you said, 9?
That's correct. The
Okay, so
CPI piece.
you're wanting to reword that somehow? Do you have an idea on how you want to reword that?
Or remove it if that's easier. Or it can be, you know, if there's a creative, you know, reviewing CPI is probably going to be part of that contemplation, right? I just don't want a month attached to it and just allow for some flexibility and creativity.
Okay, members of council, your thoughts, comments? Councillor Tamlin?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that forward. Like, yeah, I would just want to kind of just my kind of agreement what Councillor Martin is putting forward to allow that kind of flexibility of bringing in all the considerations in when it comes to that, the process of wages and increases.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Mr. Barron?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, staff will absolutely work towards coming up with something different and unique. And I guess I got to be honest, we would have also come up with something unique if we hadn't got 0 before. So I guess you live by the sword and die by the sword. In this case, the policy when we had 0, which staff took because we understood it was a policy and we didn't know it was going to be 7 or 0. So completely open to changing that. However, I will say that the reason we didn't come up with a solution last year to this, because there could be one, and there is one, and we have several in our heads, is because staff at the time had taken 0, which as the CAO of the organization felt it was only fair that we also followed a policy when it's a little bit higher. Now I think everything is evening out. COVID's over. Those economic kind of peaks and valleys are somewhat over. We'll happily come up with a solution that we hope council will agree with.
Councilor Martin?
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And to be honest, I'm sensitive to that. That's why you didn't see this until August, September of the following year, right? So it could look really petty. You know, if council were to suddenly change a policy during the year where, you know, staff really benefit, and yet we're more than happy to do the 0s, you know, the 2 years before that, whatever it was during COVID, right? So timing is important for optics, you know, for everybody, right? But I get it.
Anybody else? Myself, I'm struggling with it, Councillor Martin. This is, I guess I'm struggling because this is what I'm used to. The county does it, the township does it when it comes to CPI, and that's the way the policy is written. I'm pretty sure that most municipalities do it this way. So I'm struggling with it. I'm open to having something added to here for creativity. I just don't know what that would be right now. And maybe we could put this off for staff to come back with some changes to item number 9 that would keep in the idea of what this is and open up with the idea of having some creativity put forward. the end of the day, it's council will approve the annual cost of living adjustment through the budgeting process. Council has that final decision. So even if staff were to be creative, we'd still have the final decision to say whether we're going to go CPI or go to create a version. It's up to council to decide what that wage increase is going to be, if anything. You know, we had that fulsome discussion around the last budget cycle, as you stated, and points were made on both sides. And I know, you know, 2 years previous, it was a 0. And staff took that 0. I'm just struggling with taking this out completely. I think maybe it can be massaged. And I'd like to see that massaged and brought back to council as a piece to be more clear and to be more supportive of what you're trying to do at the same time. I don't want to eliminate it altogether. That's for sure. There's got to be something in there that's going to address the cost of living that's happening in that particular year. I think that this year we're sitting, I don't know, somewhere around 4% right now, maybe 5%. It drops again tomorrow. So it would be interesting to see what it ends up being. That's Martin.
Thank you. I'd be happy with that. I just don't want to see August on that line. I don't want to see a specific month outlined as far as COLA goes. That's all. It can be massaged or deleted or tweaked or whatever. I just, it's too limiting the way it reads right now.
Can we then come up with some suggestions of how to change this current resolution that says the Township of Mapleton Council will repeal or cancel the Township of Mapleton policy that dictates the annual staff wage rate be increased by COLA for a specific month? I get that. Can we add something to this, as you know, that we get rid of that specific month and that staff come back with a revised options for council to consider regarding cost of living increases?
Yep. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would suggest that if, you know, on bullet 9, if as of August of each year was removed, like those 2, 4, 6 words would satisfy the intent of the notice of motion and provide the flexibility that I'm looking for, and still keeps CPI and, you know, the cost of living word in there. Would that make sense?
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to ask Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, do you see any pitfalls with removing the August date?
Through you, your worship, the reason that the August date came into being is because I need enough time to put together a budget. And the August date appeared to be a reasonable number to get for year-over-year CPI, and then allow me to present the financial statements to council. If prior to that, I thought we had a CPI we were using in the month of October. Well, that's not enough time for me to prepare a budget if we're using something I don't even know what the CPI is in October. So the flexibility was, I understand that, but it's a practical number for me to, as a guidance to develop a budget process. I would still argue that we would probably be urging council to ensure that the tax rates are going up by CPI, because in the long run, historical practice indicates that that is the best practice to reduce the overall tax burden over a decade or so. So somewhere in that area where 27% of all our expenditures is wages, we sort of have to kind of fit that into the overall strategies with respect to the tax rates as well. So I would be arguing that I still find an August date is useful, but if we were to have another target for the tax rates based on something with CPI, I would be arguing that you probably should be using that as your cost of living as well.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Further questions, comments? Go ahead, Mr. Tamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on item 9 there, it says council will approve any annual cost of living adjustment through the budgeting process. So would the wording be like council will consider any annual cost of living adjustment through the budget process? So we're taking that information based on the timing that John has suggested. But then there's still deliberations in there rather than this written in as like we're going to be set with what's being said. Does that make sense?
Well, this here, being that council will approve any annual cost of living adjustment through the budget process, allows council to make those adjustments if they want to. So we could have, in our last budget process, said, no, we're not going to go with 7, we can go with 3. We could have done that. That line allows council to make the final decision, not say, it doesn't say that council must go with whatever that CPI number is.
Okay.
Council has that authority to make those changes. Councilor Martin.
I understand where Councillor Tamlin's coming from. It depends on the lens in which you view that particular, could, should, will, depends on your understanding of legal words, right, versus consider. I think it probably just depends on how you view it, but
So you can
think
take
the
the word
gist of
will and make it may, and that'll change the whole
will
context of it.
consider, either or, right? Like it's not that big a deal. I think, I think that's something that we obviously do through the budgeting process. And that phrase for me doesn't feel binding, but.
Okay. So we have the motion right now that Council and Township Mapleton repeal cancel Township Mapleton policy that dictates the annual staff wage rate be increased as per COLA of a specific month, and further that wage increases be proposed and discussed publicly during annual budget process. Any further comments, questions, directions from council? Councilor Reid, let's go with you.
Being relatively new to the budget process in the last year, I kind of also agree that it kind of pigeonholes us in a sense, having that date there, because we're only looking at that month when really the creativity of looking at maybe the whole year for somebody who's trying to budget makes more sense. But optically and quality wise, I can understand sticking and looking at CPI because it's important. But I also agree that having a specific time that we're like not guaranteeing, but using, it just seems to, like, I understand John's point of view for using it because it allows him time, but I really think having it there is very condensing. It doesn't give us a variety to look at.
Could I make the suggestion to council that this be postponed to the next council meeting and allow staff to come back with recommendations of changing line number 9? Would someone want to make that recommendation? Can't postpone unless someone puts out the staff recommendations, right? So Councillor Martin has put forward this motion. We can change this motion here and or we can go with what's laid out here. We can make changes to it, or we can postpone it and bring it back and with the direction to staff to come back with some ideas on how to change that line. That's maybe would allow them to give some clarification on what, when it's the CEO and the finance director could have some conversations and maybe come back with some creative ideas that could fit into there as well. That would fulfill the desire of this motion.
So unless somebody else defers it, I think it's clear enough. like the notice of motion is clear enough that it is the August piece that's the issue with this motion. You know, to John's concern, I get it. As far as I'm concerned, use August. I don't care. I just don't want it in the policy, right? If you can justify that, right, based on your financial planning, works for me, right? I just don't want it written in the policy that that's where the hat gets hung on. And then suddenly everyone's, you know, because maybe one year you won't like it, maybe you like July better, right? So like my only issue is that there's 1 month that just seems to hang in the balance, whether it's good or bad. And so if we strip that out, everything else can still be reviewed based on the CPI, you know, cost of living stuff, you know, you pull those 6 words out. It's not in the policy. You guys still build your proposal based on whatever parameters that you like. That would satisfy me.
Councilor Reid?
If like Councilor Martin says we take those 6 days out, it really doesn't change the basis of what that statement's making. It's still allowing them to use CPI. It's just not pigeonholing to that specific date. Whether we use that for reporting or not really shouldn't have a basis on the wage increases we give because they're done through the budget process.
All right. So what the recommendation is that as of August of each year, be removed. Is what you basically want out of here. Can we add, then I want to ask council if they would like to add to this resolution then, and that staff come back with a revised number 9 on this report. To come back with a revised one that would satisfy council. Besides just ripping out that portion. Because you want to add, if you want to add creativity, or we just leaving it open and they can just be creative on their own without having it written down. Councilor, go ahead.
But I 100% agree with that because it gives them the creativity to come back. If 1 year that it's warranted that it's 3%, fine, but there could be a year that it's warranted that's even more than 7. Like it's all on, I get equality and CPI, but all those things take into consideration. It's not just one number, 1 month, 1 day.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this resolution? If we're going to go ahead with this resolution just the way it is. Nothing further? All those in favor? Opposed? What are you doing?
Comment on that. So we're agreeing to, this is to repeal and cancel this.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what the resolution is.
Okay, but I thought we were saying that we were going to look back, we're going to just take one element of it out.
No, we're going with the resolution that was proposed.
Okay.
So the resolution reads that COLA of a specific month, right?
That's
So
right.
I'm like in detail would be those 6 words that would be removed, not the entire bullet point 9.
Correct.
Okay, not the entire
Yes.
policy.
No, you're not, you were just taking out the, as of August each year with this resolution, removes that part of August. Well, it says repeal or cancel the township of Mapleton policy that dictates the annual staff wage increase be increased as per COLA of a specific month. So that's as Mr. Martin clarified that it's of the month of August. That's getting removed. Okay? Are we all? So can we make a change that says the township of Mapleton amend the township policy instead of repeal or cancel? Would that be okay with you, Councilor
Please.
Martin?
Thank you.
Thank you. And that Councilor Reid, since you seconded it, would that be okay with you as well? Amend? Okay. Let's go with this again. Moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Reid, the township of Mapleton amend the township of Mapleton policy that dictates that the annual staff wage be increased as per COLA of a specific month and further that wage increases be proposed and discussed publicly during the annual budget process. Everybody clear? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Perfect, thank you. Do we have any other business on item 15? Anybody bring anything up? Councilor Martin?
Just a question, I guess, as we, thank you, Mr. Mayor, as we approach the 2024 budget season. Something that this council has never done since 2014, 15 budget year is for a goal to be set as far as the budget goes, like increases. You know, you see in a lot of different municipalities, lower and upper tier, tend to contemplate, you know, a goal, whether that's a 4% on the levy and 8% on the levy. Would that be something that we could think about as a goal for staff to, because they put an awful lot of work into what the budget looks like and the levy that gets attached to it. Is that something that would be considered informative and useful?
Mr. Morrison?
Through you, your worship. What I'm beginning to introduce, wasn't intending to do it this year, but certainly for next year, is introduce measures about level of service as part of the asset management concepts that you've only started to be introduced to. So I'm already hearing things, the fire department's a good example, right? Where we are going to see some significant pressures, but there's pressures in other areas as well. So what I put the staff on notice is that I have to come up with some sort of driver as to what is acceptable level of service for you to accept. And that will kind of drive out at the end of the day, what would be the overall goal or target? Because if it's unacceptable, the end product, you're going to have to recycle back and look at those levels of service and say, well, I guess we're going to have to lower something here. Or I want this to be higher because we really find that unacceptable. So we're in the process of doing it because I don't really know what all the levels of service. I see hundreds of departments out there, but I'm not sure what they all do. And I've been here for at least 5 years. So we need to start measuring that out. So we are going to spend, just as an example off the top of my head, you know, we're going to do ditching and we're going to spend 50 grand a year, and we're going to do, how many kilometers are we going to do ditching a year? And if we have to do twice as much, are we going to increase the budget twice as much to do that? Or do we not want to maintain that level of service, whatever is provided by the ditching in terms of that service that is being provided to the roadways? So we really need to think about it as is in total, how we're going to deliver things. Right now, I think for our first budget process, our initial thought process would be we're just trying to gear the tax rates to at least as close as we can get to the current CPI index, because historically, as I said, that reduces the overall burden for the taxpayers over the long haul. We're going to have to look at all these different pressures, and we may come up with a different recommendation that you'll be talking about in October. So you'll have your ability to think about what that is. But by next year, I certainly hope that we could come up with some significant drivers in each service areas as to what we're expecting that to provide, because there are certain technical stuff that's Jamie has an easy time with because they're dictated by the ministry, but there's other stuff that is not dictated and we don't know what those should be. So that's a huge cultural shift that will be occurring within the next 2 years, because as I say, by 2025, we have to have a conversation, is if we have a serious problem, how are we going to fund it moving forward? Now, I've been seeing some creative stuff out there that maybe not quite as bad as I've been indicating to you, but we still have some problems out there. So this is going to be a conversation we're going to have over the next few months, or a couple of years. So I don't want to be seeing us straight jacket or pigeonholed into a process that will have to be changed anyways because of the way in which we want you to look at how we will maintain the assets over their life cycle.
Mr. Morrison, follow up?
Thank you. Yeah, so just reflecting on that, so do you anticipate being able to do that within a 3-year budget? Is that what you're planning on, or are you gonna go 1 year and then a 2-year?
Well, to start with, the 3-year budget is sort of our commitment to you about where we think things are going to land in the next 3 years. So that's what we tried very hard to come up with those targets, because your council, your term of council ends in 3 years, literally. So we're trying to make certain that when you go back to the ratepayers, you can at least say to them, you know, I agreed with this envelope, the staff committed to it, and we could provide those services. But if we start asking every year for a little bit more of this or a little bit extra here, we have to have a good reason for you to say, well, they had the good we need to do that because we're going to impact that level of service. So in the next few cycles, you will probably start to see how those drivers will kind of dictate what that envelope should be moving forward. If it's higher than the consumer price index, so be it. Like the Central Wellington, I'm hearing is, you know, it's very, you know, they're going with CPI, and then they have, you know, a bridge index levy, and then they're going even more to capture up the infrastructure deficit. I'm not sure I would be proposing that until I have a good feel for, you know, some of the strategies that being put forward. I mean, Jamie and our new asset manager have been doing some great stuff that I've seen with respect to the roads, and just, you know, rethinking about how roads are done is kind of taking some pressure off us moving forward. And that has to be factored into all the different assets. So at this point, for your foreseeable future, next 3 years, I think we're just looking at least a target that we can live with, because we're going to be setting up, starting to look at that starting next year, what that's practically going to mean and what it's going to mean in the next term of council for the next councillors who are here at that point. I don't have all the answers right now, just strategizing and moving in a direction that seems logical and consistent.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Seems like you get work cut out for you and the entire team. All right, anything else for other business? Then we'll go to item 16.1, moved by Councillor Tamlin, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council move into a closed session to consider the following subject matters: review and adoption of the closed session minutes, August 8, 2023, labor relations, A, labor relations, B, employee negotiations, and a proposed disposition of land by the municipality. All in favor? We'll take 10 minutes and then reconvene in the other room.